We hope you enjoyed this movie. On your right, you can see the cast of the giant turtle's track on which the paleontologist gives an explanation of the turtle's gait and the footprints it leaves on the edge of the lagoon. This model represents the excavation site. On the cliffside, you see the limestone benches from which the lithographic stones and fossils were extracted. Facing the cliff, a gentle slope with a rectangular shelter. It is the edge of the lagoon from which come many traces, formed 140 million years ago, in the same way that we see on the island of Aldabra the turtle leaving the footprints of its passage on the limestone mud. Below, on the right, here is a jellyfish fossil. The fineness of the limestone grains allows the fossilization of very fragile organisms. The Cerin region was located in a coral reef in the Cerin-Marchamp. There are still limestone rocks that the hard corals, reef builders, have formed by accumulating their mineral skeletons made up of pure limestone. Very fine, a few micrometers, millionth of a meter, very resistant, formed by microalgae and bacteria. This veil is a major element in the formation of the Cerin fossils. On this plate, the undulations could have been made by the current or by rills gullying the slope of the edge of the lagoon. The red coloring comes from iron oxide. The fine black traces are not of vegetable origin as one might think, but are dendrites, from the Greek dendron tree, arborescences of crystals of manganese oxides created by the water which penetrates into micro cracks. In the last showcase you can see the casts of an Archaeopteryx and a pterodactyl found in the Solnhütten quarry in Bavaria. More on this later. Let's now head to the museum, a former washhouse. The reception building, which you are leaving, was, until the beginning of the 20th century, a fruiter, where the famous Comté cheese was made. At the very top of the hill overlooking the museum, you will see the lithographic stone quarry. On the right is the excavation area initiated by the CNRS National Center for Scientific Research, in 1972. These excavations stopped in 1992. The quarry was exploited for more than a century, until 1910. The stones collected were used for lithography. This printing method is simpler than metal engraving. The drawing is executed directly on the stone with a grease pencil. The lithographic technique is based on the chemical principle of the repulsion of oil and water. During printing, the stone is constantly wet. The ink, oily, remains on the drawing but is driven by the water on the bare stone. The invention of photoengraving, in the middle of the 19th century, put an end to the commercial exploitation of the lithographic process. The quarry, difficult to access, in the mountains, did not allow very profitable exploitation despite the excellent quality of the Cerin stone, made up of pure limestone with a very fine grain. However, the quarrymen regularly discovered magnificent fossils. These were bought by wealthy collectors and scientists. In particular, the scientist Victor Thialia, who immediately understood the paleontological importance of the site. Until his death in 1859, he continued to collect Cerin fossils. This collection of exceptional pieces is donated to the Guimet Museum of Natural History in Lyon. They are now part of the collection of the Musée des Confluences. On the other hand, several thousand Cerin fossils are currently in natural history museums around the world. Covered during the screening of the film that Cerin, in the Jurassic, more precisely in the Cerin, about 140 million years ago was a tropical lagoon. Do not imagine that the sea was much higher at that time. Cerin was at current sea level, on a coral reef. Then, 66 million years ago, with the phenomenon of continental drift, the Adriatic microplate meets the European plate and, from this alpine ocean, emerges the chain of the Alps and the Jura. This same continental drift also explains the tropical climate and the presence of corals. In the Cerin, Cerin was located a little above the Tropic of Cancer. The excavation site was chosen at the extreme south of the quarry, easily accessible by a path allowing quick access to the road. This pragmatic choice benefited the scientists. It was the edge of the lagoon. This made it possible to find many traces of animals, in particular giant tortoises. These traces were immediately molded in order to be able to analyze them. Shape of the paw prints, distances between them, projections of mud reflecting the degree of humidity of the alluvium. The trace, generally too vast to be kept intact, would be sacrificed to reveal the secrets of the next layer. This stone is the negative of a fish fossil. What you see is the underside of the layer that revealed the fossil on display at the Masada confluences. As this layer was not easily removed, the person in charge of the excavation authorized the use of a disc cutter, and this piece, as well as the fossil, have retained a vivid memory of the fish's tail. This exceptional trace that we see placed at the bottom of the washhouse is not a molding but the original stone. The initial hypothesis adopted was that of traces of jumping dinosaurs but was later called into question, the species having left these marks remaining mysterious for the moment. The scientists used the same techniques as the quarrymen. Each stratum was separated using wedges. Then the rock that had yielded was lifted in the hope of discovering a fossil on the stone thus cleared. This would then be isolated from the layer using a grinder and then carefully extracted. Fossils of invertebrates, crustaceans, shellfish, starfish, jellyfish, comatulus and sea urchins, fragile organisms composed essentially of water, demonstrate the finesse of Cerin limestone. This quality, appreciated by lithographers, is now appreciated by paleontologists. We discover in Cerin many fish, sometimes primitive ancestors of species living in our time, such as rays and sharks. Many microdons have been fossilized. These fish, often nicknamed coral grazers, help to form the calcareous mud by crushing shells and coral. While most fish fossils show their skeletons, the fossilization process in the Cerin lagoon has left some with their scaly skin, sometimes providing a very realistic image of fish swimming in the warm waters of this lagoon. Coelacanths are also present in Cerin, famous for being today considered a living fossil. What is also nicknamed taxon Lazarus is a taxon species, which was believed to be extinct but which is rediscovered alive. Name given in reference to the character of Lazarus, resuscitated by Jesus in the Gospels. Coelacanths, well represented in the fossil record, was supposed to have disappeared 70 million years ago. It was rediscovered in 1938 off the coast of South Africa. This fish has curious characteristics. Its paired fins are connected to its skeleton by a humerus and a femur. Its skull is articulated in two parts and it has a lung, regressed and non-functional. The species is now in great danger of extinction because of man. This piece is the most famous of all the Cerin fossils. This small crocodile is only known by this unique type specimen. Despite its size, it is already an adult. Its way of life was probably aquatic, whereas the other crocodile species found in Cerin were rather terrestrial and more primitive. The discovery of pterodactyl bones slightly extended the time of excavations at Cerin in the hope of finding, as at Solnhofen in Bavaria, a fossil of this mythical flying animal or of an Archaeopteryx, commonly considered the ancestor of birds. The fossils of ferns close in size to the ferns of our undergrowth are numerous. There are also fronds of zamites, kinds of dwarf palms. There are no fossils of flowering plants in Cerin. If a large quantity of fossils were found during the exploitation of the quarry, the excavations organized by the CNRS team, which only lasted 20 years, the summer months alone, brought knowledge of the environment to the Khmer region and the explanation of the phenomenon of fossilization in the lagoon. The excavation site allowed a scientific approach, a descent in time, as explained at the beginning of the film, with the methodical clearing of more than 400 layers, or strata, numbered from top to bottom in a decreasing fashion, the first alluvial deposit being at the very bottom, at the bottom of the lagoon. For each layer was informed each discovery. To fully understand, let's look at this oriented sea urchin fossil. The radioles, spikes, all directed to the right, indicating the existence of a current in the lagoon. On the edge of this fossil, we see an arrow indicating the top. We can deduce that it is a fossil, and not its negative. Then a number 288, it is the number of the layer. The one above, previously cleared, was 289, and the one below will be 287. A plus B indicates that this layer will split into two layers in one place. The initials BG are probably those of the person in charge of the excavations at the time of the release of the fossil. We find layer 288 on the diagram. If we follow the corresponding line, we find the small symbol of the sea urchin. This methodology has made it possible to retrace this 140 million year long history, ranging from the tropical lagoon in the Upper Jurassic to the quarry of lithographic stones in the 19th century. We thank you for your attention and wish you a good end of the day.